Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 18 of the JD Outdoors podcast. Follow me on Instagram at JD underscore outdoors 1773. My guest today will be Elite Series angler Mark Menendez. You can follow him on social media at Mark Menendez Bass. Today we'll be talking about fishing a square bill crankbait, one of his favorite techniques. So, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jordan. I'm doing all right. It's I guess I'm doing better because I don't have any white stuff on the ground like you guys do.
Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, we only got 2 inches here in Buffalo, but my mom lives in PA and they got, I think, 36 inches or something like that.
Yeah, one of my best buddies lives in Binghamton and he's
Yeah.
just he's inundated, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot right now. But and of course, here in Buffalo, we're supposed to get into the 45 degrees or something here on Sunday, I believe. So all that snow we got's gonna melt, and then it's just a vicious cycle that keeps going on. But
Well, I mean, those smallmouth don't mind when it gets cold. You better get out there and start chasing them on any good day you've got.
yeah, man, I wish we had to put the boat away. Sadly, we can't store it at my house, so we had to go put it in a storage unit somewhere. But trust me, I wish I was still out chasing them. But
Well, I'll be thinking about you the next couple of days. We have a warming trend here in Kentucky, and it's going to be in the 50s. So I will be going out, taking the skeeter, headed out, and I will be cranking a crankbait Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. That's for sure.
that's awesome. So the next question is, can you give us a little background on your fishing career, how and when you started fishing? Obviously, you've had a lot of experience in the field, so just kind of share with the listeners there what your experience is. And
Well, I got started, Jordan, when I was a young pup, and fishing just kind of evolved. I started fishing with my grandfather, and we would fish below Kentucky and Barkley dams when I was really young, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. He actually would tie a rope to my waist to his belt loop, and we fished below the dam. We fished for white bass and sauger and anything that would bite with little
yeah,
jigs. And I moved from the county into the city in the early 70s, and that's when bass clubs were exploding. That's
mhm,
when the Federation Nation, when it was just going crazy. Bass clubs were the thing to do. And my next door neighbor, I knew next door neighbor, was a big bass clubber. And this gentleman had two sons. They were headed towards high school and interested in sports and young ladies and things like that. So they really didn't want to fish with him much. So
yeah,
every time when Clyde would come in, Clyde Watts is his name, would come in and park the boat, I'd go jump in the boat with him and I'd tell him what this bait was and that bait was and this bait and that one and this is for this. And I finally, at 10 years old, captured his imagination. So he asked me to go fishing with him one day. And we fished, got there a day. He was always a daylight kind of guy. And we fished all day. And about 5 o'clock, he says, Mark, it's time to go home. And I said, why is that? He said, well, Ms. Watts will have dinner cooked. And I said, we can't leave. It's not dark yet. Well, that was a 10-year-old taking a veteran from a veteran's fishing perspective. He was amazed that I did not want to go home. And we fished together for 4 years, every Saturday and or Sunday from February to December. And he took the time to show a young person very intricate details. That's when pattern fishing was coming about, and that was the cool thing to do. And depth finders and positioning and triangulation, all of these things I had to learn became a tool. And um, he left me and went to. He was a telephone executive and moved to Memphis, Tennessee. We still fish some on occasion after that. But Clyde is 96 years old. I still have him. I still get to converse with him.
that's awesome.
And his fishing is what got me into bass fishing. And at about 10 years old, I decided that I was going to be a professional fisherman. Of course, I come from two overachievers. My mother has a doctorate in education. My father is an immigrant from Cuba that had a master's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in physics. And I
Oh,
want to go fishing.
yeah,
That did not go well at my house, Jordan, not at all.
I believe it.
But I got my degree in college in fisheries biology. I was active fishing local and regional tournaments from high school through college. And I started working on a master's degree in education. And one day in spring of 91, I told my mom, I said, I will see you tomorrow. She says, where are you going? I said, I'm headed to Montgomery, Alabama. to pay my entry fees, to pay my deposits, to get in the Bassmaster Opens. I got in those opens in fall of 91, spring of 92. And in spring of 92, I was the last guy offered a spot in the BP 100s for the 92-93 season. And I've been at that level ever since. So it's
Wow.
been a long, long road. Seems like it was yesterday. But it's been an unbelievable way to spend a lifetime.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really amazing to me how it seems everyone I've talked to so far has that one mentor that they grew up with, and it's like they changed everything for them. It's really awesome how and you never know how whose life you're going to impact by being their mentor.
Well, after Clyde moved, the backyard neighbor behind me, who was a civil engineer, his name was David Hutchison, and he was the best tournament angler in the area. He won every big tournament there was. He was an unbelievable talent in finding fish. He was a civil engineer, and he could read a contour map. He could read a map, and we would go places, and he would just point and say, "Pull up right here," and they would be there every time. So his son and I are still best friends. And David and I tournament fished together. And David taught me about tournament fishing. Clyde taught me the basics of finding the pattern, how to find fish. David taught me time management and again, fishing offshore and things like that. And I actually had two guys that are really responsible for my fishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That really is. And everyone has their expertise, I guess is what I was gonna say. Is like everyone has their niche where they're really good at it. So the more people you get to talk to and fish with, the more you learn, and that's all
Sure.
part of getting better and growing in the sport for sure.
Well, exactly. I was a high school and college tennis player, and I always wanted to play the best competition I could. I got to be pretty handy with a tennis racket. I could hold my own, but then I would go up against these kids that had much more experience than I did. I didn't start till I was a junior in high school,
Hmm.
and I always wanted to play better talent. And getting tennis and fishing and these cerebral sports where you have to make decisions, they're muscle memory sports. Now, in fishing, yes, you got to be able to flip that big jig or make that cast with a crankbait or just have the stamina to stay out there for 15 hours. But the muscle in fishing is right here.
Yeah.
So every time you can get yourself in a new situation and learn how to react and have a positive outcome and be successful in that outcome, that's how you make this muscle stronger.
Mm.
So for young people, I recommend fishing everything you can fish, whether it's a creek, whether it's somebody's pond, whether it's a small reservoir or the Great Lakes right there where you live. Every time you're thrown some kind of oddball variable, it will come back. That will cycle back 4, 5, 10 years later, and you'll go, "Oh yeah, I did this with a plug to get them to bite. Let's give that a try."
Mm.
And that makes that muscle stronger in your head and gives you the opportunity to catch those fish again. So that's what it's about.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. And to kind of just expand on that a little bit, it's I remember growing up, everyone always said when you learn something, you get another wrinkle on your brain. And that's just like fishing. It's like every single day you go out, you learn something, whether, and even if you don't know it at the moment, when you look back upon the day, which like I always try and reflect upon the day after I'm done, you learned something, whether it was like something as simple as, well, this certain dock they were on and they wanted it because it was a few feet deeper than the rest of the docks on the lake or something along those lines. But there's always something to be learned every day you're out there, which
There
is
is. And we as fishermen, as we get more experience, we become more resistant to keeping our mind open.
mm,
The 19 season, when the split happened in competitive fishing, was probably the most rewarding season I ever had, both financially, because I had a great season, made the classic, had several top tens, all of that. But it was a renaissance in fishing for me because I was able to go to the tournaments completely with my mind open. Hey, I'm an offshore guy, Jordan. I'd rather throw a 6XD, drag a worm in 25 feet of water, stroke a jig. I could not get that done at Gunnersville. I
yeah.
could not get it done. So I'm in an area of the lake. I look around. I said, well, what's the most prevalent shallow cover? And it was docks. I went to the docks. and I caught a 15-incher. And I'm like, well, how about that? As I worked further and further up the lake over the next 2 hours, I realized the further up the lake I went, the bigger the quality of fish
Hmm.
I got. So I spent 3 days in the heat in June when I should have been out there in the middle of the lake fishing my strength. And I end up with a top 20 finish and catch darn near 60 pounds for 3 days. That was so cool to
Yeah.
do that just by keeping my mind open and doing something that I don't normally do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you resist that change the older you get.
Yeah. So from there, next question I have is, what is your best bass fishing memory? Because obviously you've experienced a lot of different situations and fished with different people and whatnot over the years. So if you have one that sticks out to you the most, what would that be?
Oh my gosh, dude, that's I got to go way back in the memory banks. And um, a pivotal tournament for me was when I was 15 years old and I was in a bass club. I lied about my age. I was supposed to be 16 and I was only 15. I had my own little aluminum bass boat with a 40 horsepower on it. And it was fall. It was coming fall. It was the 1st of November. We had our last club tournament the first day of November, and our classic was 2 weeks later. I did horrible in that last tournament, yet I still managed to make our year-end tournament. The top 10 got to fish our year-end tournament. And through the experience with Mr. Watts, with Clyde, we always fished in the fall. I'm not a big hunter, so I always fished.
Yeah.
And I said, I need the weather to do this. I need the water temperature to do this, blah, 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 blah. And I ended up winning the tournament by 5 pounds.
Wow.
Uh, it was really cool because that tournament, I remember going from one location to the next and trusting my gut for the first time. I said, that looks right. That bank looks right over there. I picked up a plug and I catch a 2.5 pounder. Back then, the population of fish on Kentucky Lake wasn't that good, Jordan.
Mm.
12, 13 pounds a day, that was really good.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I catch a 2.5 pounder there and I look over across the lake on the bay I was in and I thought, that's the same deal. Run over there, catch a 2 pounder. So on my way back in, I made another one of those gut checks and I catch a 4 pounder. So that was the first time that intuitive thought kind of came into
Yeah.
my thought process. And in my bass career, there's several things that stick out. Winning your first event, the first morning of your first classic, that's a toughie.
Yeah.
Coming through the opening and you look up on the Megatron up there and you see your ugly face. That's one that still gets my Adam's apple
Yeah.
to jump up in my throat. And then catching the biggest bass of the first 31 years of Bassmaster competition, that's still surreal to me. A 13-pound, 9-ounce fish that broke all the records and kind of put me on the map. So
Yeah.
fishing still gives me those highs.
Yeah.
It still motivates me to today.
That's awesome. And like you were saying with trusting your gut and like intuitively fishing, I started fishing when I was real young and we didn't know what we were doing. We were kind of just catching whatever swam, sort of thing. And I've noticed over the past few years, now that I'm getting really seriously into tournament fishing, like when you're in the situation, instead of just being like, yeah, I'm, whatever, just kind of lollygagging, doing whatever, I'm like, I wonder what they're doing on that side of the lake, what they're doing over here on the lake. And then you kind of got to trust your gut. And then once you can put a pattern together or something, that just makes the day that much better. Because once you figured them out and it's really rewarding.
Oh yeah, on a recent trip with my son here on the Tennessee River below Kentucky Dam, fishing here has changed so much because of the invasive species problem we have with the Asian carp that I've gotten involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm burning a spinnerbait for smallmouth over rocky flats, and I burn and I burn till I'm burned out. I never got a bite. And I come by a piece of an industrial effluent that stuck way out in the water, a big pipe that came out, and I burned that spinnerbait by there, and a 3 pounder eats it at dark. It's the only bass bite I got. It was a beautiful smallmouth.
Yeah.
And my son and I couldn't fish for the next 4 or 5 days, but that whole 4 or 5 days, my brain's turning. I'm like, you big dummy. I mean, I've had great success on that. I've won $50,000 on this river. I've won multiple tournaments here. So I've got all of that history and I've been fishing that history. Well, it's changed because I haven't gotten to fish here in forever. So after that 4 or 5 days of thought, I got out there with a 5XD with a Z2 drop shot rig, and I start fishing current seams and fishing just like I do on the St. Lawrence River and up there where you're from. And let me tell you, the whole world opened up. We started catching smallmouth. I caught some big spotted bass that I haven't seen here in a lot of years. Man, it was just great to take that knowledge, be willing to throw the past out of, throw it away. And that's a lot of past and a lot of fish catches. And for all of last month, let me tell you, I had an awful fun. I caught a lot of big smallmouth there on the river, and seeing those big spots was just amazing to me. You just don't see them here anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have yet to catch a spotted bass. It is on my list for sure. Hopefully, in the next few years, I can knock that, check that off. But
Well, I'll tell you this, and your viewers and listeners may say I'm a liar, but if you take one of your 3 pound smallmouth from right there at Lake Erie, and you tie rope to his tail, and you tie it to a 3 pound spotted bass from the Coosa River spot will drown your smallmouth.
oh
And your
boy,
fish up there are some of the baddest that swim because they're used to current. But a Coosa River spotted bass, if they got bigs, they'd eat jet skis. That's how bad they are. Um, you'll love it. They're the scrappiest little fish that swims. The smallmouth is very majestic and very tough fish to catch at times, very finicky,
yeah,
and I love them. I love, except when they do that cheerleader jump where they do this in the air. Oh my gosh, my heart goes, it just goes flat lines every time. But a
yeah.
spotted bass is a bad little critter. He's bad news bear, that's for sure.
You got me even more excited than I already was. Dang.
Come on down. I'll show you how to catch them. They're not hard
Oh,
to catch. They're
I
easy to
love,
catch.
love it, love it. So this next question I ask everyone, and for you, obviously, with your experience being all over the country to fish, it's probably a little more of a difficult question to answer, but I have it phrased as where's your dream place to fish or your favorite place to fish? So I'm assuming you've been just about everywhere that you could ever want to fish. But what was your favorite place then that sticks out to you the most? And
Ooh, man, like you said, I've been from coast to coast. The only place I really haven't fished is in the far northwest. I've
mm,
not been to the Columbia River. I've not been up into Idaho and fished up
yeah,
in there. That's about the only place I haven't fished. Um, I've fished in Mexico. I've fished saltwater. I've done just about everything. But as far as bass fishing goes, I love the St. Lawrence River. It's so beautiful around Clayton and Alex Bay and all of that. It's just gorgeous. That's one of the hit list places that I love. I love anywhere on the Tennessee River where I can wind a big plug when they get ganged up out there. That's really fun. But I'm going to surprise you where my favorite place to fish is, and it's in Alabama. It's not one of the most noteworthy lakes in Alabama. It's Lake Martin. Lake Martin is in Alex City, Alabama. It is about a 40,000 acre lake that fish is huge. It's
mhm.
basically shaped kind of like your hand. There's
Okay.
lobes off of it, and everything is fishable, Jordan. It's really good. The coolest thing about that lake is it is the best pattern lake in the country. If they're on rock transitions from pea gravel to golf ball size rock, you can run around the lake and find that, and there's fish on every one of those transitions. If they're on the inside corner of 30-foot deep points, they're on every one of them.
Yeah.
It's a lake in which a lucky bite helps. Getting a 3 pound bite really speeds you up, moving up and down the tournament weigh-in board. We had a tournament there in 18, and I finished in the top 12. And Takahiro won that event, and I was chomping at his heels the whole time. A slow second day prevented me from really becoming a threat to him, but he was fishing about 300 yards up the bank from me, and he found the right little set of fish there, and I was picking them off all the way down. But I love Lake Martin. It truly is a great place to fish.
I'll have to put that on my list of places to fish. I got in the notes app on my phone. I just have every year or every day almost. I'm adding a lake that I want to fish, and just it's getting to be a pretty daunting list, but I still got plenty of time to knock them all off. So
Well, it's a good time to go now because it's a great wintertime lake, late fall and
okay.
wintertime lake. You can go right now and get on windy points and burn a spinnerbait and catch all the spotted bass you ever want to catch. So
All right.
I suggest leaving soon.
Yeah, tempting me. So now let's get into the kind of the meat and potatoes of the episode, as I say. And if you could break down the bait for us, what is your favorite setup or setups if you have multiple? Because I know like a lot of you guys, when you're really on a pattern, you'll have multiple colors of a certain bait or whatnot. But the rod, the reel, the line, the hooks you use, the specific lure for square bill cranking. So
Well, a square bill, it has a range just like every other crankbait, a deep diving crankbait, an XD crankbait, or whatever. But the whole idea to a square bill crankbait is the same premise that I use when I'm throwing a Series 5, a 6XD, a 10XD. It's all about deflection.
mm,
And that makes that fish react to the bait. Because many times when that crankbait is coming like this, when it's wiggling, they get right behind it and they do what I call the NASCAR. They get right behind the darn thing and track it. Well, if you don't do something out of the ordinary, you can't get that fish to react. And one of the things I like to do at seminars is once I get into a seminar and I start talking about something and everybody kind of gets relaxed and they get warm, they've had a little lunch, everybody kind of gets a little sleepy, is I'll pick up my tackle box and I'm talking about doing something abnormal in the bass's environment. So I've got them just about asleep. And then all of a sudden I walk over there and as I'm talking and explaining, I grab that tackle box and I sling the darn thing across the room and stuff goes everywhere and everybody sits up. And I said, that's abnormal behavior, isn't it? You're in here talking, we're talking about fishing. You hear my voice. When you do something abnormal in a bass's in his world, that's abnormal, something that's not normal, you get their attention instantly.
mm,
And that's when I bring in the idea of the deflection of the crankbait. Your job as an angler with whatever crankbait you're using is to create that deflection. If you can't get the bait to the bottom, always try to choose a bait in which you can get to the bottom. Your responsibility is to do something different. Stop and go, stop and go, stop and go, stop, sweep,
mm,
snatch it real hard, whatever, make it do something crazy, and you get that bass's attention. So with a square bill, we're not so concerned with depth. So I'll use bigger line. Most of the time with a square bill, I'm fishing around some kind of cover, whether it's rock, whether it's wood, whether it's boat docks. So my line size is generally bigger because I'm not worried about getting it deeper.
mm,
I'm worried about bouncing it off cover and
yeah.
then having the strength to lead that fish out of there. Not necessarily pull him, but lead him out of there. So the other thing with cranking, Jordan, that's real important as we become better anglers, as we all have more experience and we become better anglers, we get used to that crankbait. We feel that crankbait. We know it's going from side to side when we're retrieving that bait.
Mm,
So we become very hyper focused on what that bait's doing. And if that bait does something different, what do? First thing we do is we set the hook. So as we become better anglers and we get so in tune with that, we get so in tune, I have to have something that slows from my reaction time from my hand when I feel a strike to my brain, and that it becomes my rod.
mm,
I use a composite rod or a glass rod. I've used glass rods for years. I'm using composite now. Lew's has a series of crankbait rods called the Perfect Crankbait Rod from David Fritz. And David's of that same thought process that you have to have some lag time from hand to here to allow that fish to get it. With a graphite rod, everything's transmitted to your hand so much faster. That fish attacks your lure and he barely gets it, and you only get one little hook in him. But with the composite, I don't feel it as well. He gets the whole bait and
mm,
he gets a better hookup. So that glass rod or composite rod is the best way to go. If you don't have a glass rod or composite rod, or right now finances are tough, just use the lightest action graphite rod that you have. Use a medium light or a medium action graphite rod if you can. The other thing is speed of retrieve. With a square bill, I'm generally using it in a little bit warmer water, so I use a little faster retrieve than I normally do. My deep cranking, I use a Lew's BB1 with a 5.1 to 1 gear ratio, But here I use a Team Lose Light with a 6.8 to 1 gear ratio. My normal speed in cranking, this is cruise control for me. So I've done it for so long that I have to change the gear ratio to slow that down or speed that up. Um, in my own mind, because this is where I crank. I'm too old and too stupid to slow down. So I just get another reel with a slower gear rate. I can still crank the same speed.
Yeah.
So that's a key aspect. Um, Square bills come in multiple sizes. Most people generally think of a 1.5, like a KVD 1.5 is your ultimate square bill choice, and it's a great one. But you also have that square bill that runs 5 feet in a 2.5 and 6 feet in a 4.0. And I throw an 8.0 square bill an awful lot. That is a really big bodied square bill that dives 8 to 9 feet. And I use that on places where there are a lot of big fish. Your Texas lakes, your Tennessee rivers, your Florida's getting in the rim canal at Okeechobee or something like that. And so the equipment will change a little bit, but it's always that slow rod and that 6.8 to 1 gear ratio. I use Seaguar and VizX line anywhere from 12 to 20, depending upon grass or cover that I'm trying to keep that bait in the strike zone with. One variance that I may make, Jordan,
Mhm.
with um, grass fishing, I may go to a graphite rod with fluorocarbon line. I may take a Lew's custom light rod and use it in a medium so that I can snatch it through grass a little easier.
Okay.
Your composite rod is so forgiving, you can't get enough oomph to
Yeah.
snatch that bait out of the grass sometimes. That's the only time I'll use a graphite rod most of the time. But it's a round cover and in cover, bouncing it off the cover if possible. And if not, one of the cool things about a square bill is when you get it in the strike zone, around a dock piling, coming down that lay down log, um, whatever it is, I can get it and kind of hesitate my reel handle like that, and it causes that bait to do the same thing a jerk bait will do in the
Mm.
same place. And a lot of times they need a little extra if it's a lake that gets a lot of pressure, or it's a post spawn deal where they're a little lethargic. When you get it around that piece of cover and it starts doing that odd ball flicking around like a jerk bait, it's like slow motion. You'll see it moving. And all next thing you see is jaws coming to get it. So um, it's something that we all use an awful lot, and you can cover a lot of water with that square bill.
Yeah, for sure. So color wise, I know you have your own line of colors with striking and all of that. So what made you develop those colors, and kind of what situations, if you had to kind of put like base colors down for crankbaits, because obviously you go to the store and there's thousands of options on the shelves. If
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to break it down for someone who's new to fishing, or someone who might be getting in their head a little bit with the whole, getting every single color sort of thing, how do you break that down and how do you go about that?
Well, it's pretty simple. If you look in my box, you'd kind of go, huh, this is kind of boring, Mark. You'll see chartreuse base baits, you'll see white base baits, and then you'll see a few reds. The reds are generally pre-spawn, late winter, pre-spawn, and or smallmouth waters.
Hmm.
You've got white base baits that are shad based baits, and you have chartreuse base baits that are bluegill or perch colored
Okay.
replications. I do have a few patterns that, um, there for a while I thought, I got to have something nobody else has, which generally just breeds more confidence in the bait for me.
Hmm.
And I came out with some colors there for Strike King that colored the whole gamut of bluegill versus shad. Not a lot of crayfish in this series, but um, what I want in a bait is something that has a relatively dark back that bleeds over into something that is pretty light. Because what I want is when that bait pulses and it flashes like that, I want color to be thrown.
Mm.
That pulse becomes a very important thing. That's why a chartreuse in black or a chartreuse in white is really, really a productive bait, because it pulses just like that. When that bait makes that flash, that causes that bass to react. So for the person that's getting into fishing that has a limited budget or just wants to be cautious on what they're spending, Um, a chartreuse and black one will work in a bluegill base. It will work around that perch base. And then the chartreuse and white is one that you can use on overcast days in muddy water or that shad base deal. Um, as you become a little more seasoned, you will notice that your perch are different. Is what is really fun. I have yellow perch in Kentucky Lake,
Hmm.
and the yellow perch here don't look anything like the yellow perch do up at Waddington on the St. Lawrence River. They don't look the same as the Eastern Basin where you live on Erie, and they look totally different at St. Clair. So
Yeah.
you start learning some variations, and you start getting some color patterns that become regional. So I've got a few of those in the box, but reds for cold water and early spring and a few smallmouth applications. White base baits and chartreuse base baits are what I've got. And like I said, it'd be kind of boring if you got my tackle box.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that I have definitely fallen into the trap of when I first started just getting every color out there. And I have a whole shelf next to me here that I'm looking at right now. And right off the bat, I'm seeing craw, I'm seeing parrot and sexy shad, and then like a ghost green. And I've kind of found that once I started getting into the really off the wall colors, I'm looking at them like they look good, but I don't know how if I have the confidence in them. So I end up going back to those basic colors anyways at the end of the day. So
Exactly. I appreciate the fact that you bought all those extra Strike King baits. We thank you very much. And those have their places. They have their places, but the generalization of just those basics is what, if you looked in most of the pros boats, that's what you're going to find.
yeah.
That tried and true material is what we really use most of the time.
Yeah, and I think it's when you can keep things simple, because obviously there's so many variables in bass fishing as it is. So when you can keep something simple, that just makes your life a lot easier, and it's you don't have to, and because obviously as anglers we overthink during the day anyways. We're like, well, we're not getting enough bites, we haven't gotten any bites, what are they doing, why is this not happening, why is this happening? So when you can just go back to the basics and be like, okay, I have a few colors to choose from, I know that they're going to bite one of them, and then you can kind of figure it out from there. And
Exactly. Over the years, people have asked me, what do you think's the most technological thing that's come in fishing over the years? And we have all of this unbelievable new technology as far as electronics.
mhm,
I've been using live scope from the onset. Panoptic started that. My Garmin units, I'm looking forward. I've been doing that for several years. I didn't want to talk about it much because I knew I only had a limited window. That's the deal, all these bigger boats and bigger motors. But I think the most important thing that's come along in my lifetime is the technological advance of fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon to me can take an angler from an okay angler to an excellent angler because it transmits the strike so well. It's invisible underwater. Its strength. It can take a rod and reel combination that was not suitable if you only had monofilament like we had for multiple techniques. Now you can do different things with it. And then the abrasion resistance and the knot strength of it is amazing to me. Seagar brought that technology to the US in the early 70s. And it took me a while to get on that fluorocarbon train. And now I very seldom fish with monofilament anymore.
yeah.
Maybe 5 or 10% of the time do I use monofilament. But that's a very technical part of my fishing when I'm using that monofilament.
Mhm.
But and then braided lines have been around for years. Braided Dacron, braided silk, now the technical braids that we have now, and it just increases efficiency and strength, and you land more fish with the new fishing lines than what we used to. I think that's the most technologically savvy thing that's happened in my career.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, since I've started fishing, I've had all of these available to me. But my one mentor, Scott Gald, he told me when I first started, he was like, if you want to save a headache and money, start off with mono on everything you got,
Yes.
because you're going to backlash like crazy when you first start, and you're going to have to cut all the line off. So, like my first few years, I was using mono on everything. I'm getting used to it, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. And then once I switched over to braid and fluorocarbon, I was like, this is just lights out, world of difference. Just
Yeah, your
It was
efficiency went
insane.
up. Your cast that you make, and when you're fishing in vegetation, that braid comes through the vegetation
Yeah.
better, so you get more efficiency in your cast. Your hookup ratio is better. You don't break off as many. There are just so many positives to using the Superline as well as the fluorocarbon. It's
Mhm.
just amazing. Now I'm kind of slow, so the braid to fluorocarbon leader deal is a little bit hard. As you see, these are new to me. I haven't been wearing glasses much but I can't see anymore. I've gotten older, and it's tough for me to tie that FG knot,
Yeah.
Alberto or whatever knot you want to tie. It's really tough for me to see to do that. So that I've been a little slow to transition towards that, but I have to just because of the darn efficiency of it.
Yeah. And up here, obviously, fishing the Great Lakes and Niagara River and all of that, a lot of it is on spinning tackle. So I fish with my dad a lot, and trying to get him to do the whatever knot we're using at the time to put the leader on there. He's like, Jordan, I cannot see this at all. And I'm like, all right, I'll tie it for you real quick. And I'm doing it in like a few seconds. And I'm like, boom, boom, boom. He's like, how are you getting that so good or so quickly and all that? And I'm like, I guess it's just because I can see better than you. I don't know what it is, but
Well, one of the things I've gone to doing, particularly with a drop shot, and I found it's had no variance on my fish catching, using straight fluorocarbon.
hmm,
I will take a number 6 or a number 8 Spro swivel, one of those little bitty small
yeah,
swivels, barrel swivel, and tie it to my line, to my main line, tie it to my leader, leave 3.5 feet for my drop shot. I can still pitch it, I can still cast it, I can still drop it over the side. And that takes all the twist
hmm,
out of that drop shot rig, having that little bitty barrel swivel on there. I tie a Palomar on one end, I tie a Palomar on the other end, tie my drop shot knot, tie my drop shot weight to it, and I go down the St. Lawrence and out there where you live, and 6 pound to 60 pound, I have had no problem with that. And I don't think it causes me to have any other, not get as many bites or anything like that. So for those of you all that are watching this that can't see very well anymore, that's what I do an awful lot.
I'll have to have my dad definitely try that out this year. I've just and it's weird because like I steelhead fish and stuff, and we use the little swivels, and for some reason that they don't mind it. So I don't know why I've never really corresponded that with. Well, I don't think the bass would mind that much either, but
Smallmouth are greedy. When they get a chance to eat something, they're going to eat it
yeah,
9 times out of 10. So, and I don't think it makes any difference in the world. And I've never had it fail while I was fighting a fish either. I've
yeah.
never had it fail.
Hmm. All right, thank you for all of that, and thank you for breaking down that bait and then going into the drop shot there. Definitely a lot of good information there, and for anyone who's just starting or is experienced, I think everyone can get a little something out of that section right there for sure. So I have a few last questions to wrap up the show. Kind of some fun questions, and then one that I think helps out everyone. And I put it in there because I personally wanted the answer to it because it's something that a lot of us anglers struggle with. But the first fun question is, what is your favorite snack on the water?
No, dude, I'm an eater. I love to eat during the day. It's a smorgasbord when it's a picnic. I've always got sandwiches or cookies or fruit or whatever, but I never leave home because I will eventually forget to put lunch in the boat sometime. I've always either got sardines or I've got tuna fish in the boat. That goes back to one of my mentors, Clyde Watts. He had his Miss Joe, she always made the best sandwiches. So I love to have a good sandwich. But David Hutchison, he never had anything in the boat. He'd either have beanie weenies or smoked oysters or sardinis or whatever. So I get it from both sides. I do like a good sardine every now and then.
Nice. That's it. That's definitely a different answer than what I've gotten so far. I got, I think on the last episode, he was like, I buy a whole pizza, I eat half of it the night before, and then half
I
of
do
it on
that
the
too. I'm
next day.
guilty. I'm guilty. Nothing better than cold pizza.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, sardines, I've never had them to be honest with you. So
It won't hurt you. It won't hurt you. You just smear a little of it on your bait and drop it over the side, and it's fish formula.
that's a great answer. Definitely a great answer there. So then this next question, I think you especially are going to have a great answer for it because you're definitely a very positive individual. But do you have any tips for anglers to stay positive while on the water?
Well, those of you all that know what's happened in my life over the last few years, I lost my wife almost 7 years ago to pancreatic cancer. And cancer affects us all.
Yeah.
End of story. And prior to Donna becoming ill with cancer, I was like this, Jordan. This is all I thought about was fish, 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 fish.
Hmm.
And cancer taught me to lighten up. It taught me to laugh. It taught me to be more appreciative of the place that I'm in and who I'm with and what I'm doing. Um, Fishing is just fishing.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not, it's not curing cancer. It's not nuclear science. It's fishing. And we can do the great thing about fishing is you can fish at any level you want to. You can fish for a living like I do. You can fish on the weekends for stress relief. You can fish once a month with your kids or your significant other. That's the greatest thing about fishing. It's supposed to be fun.
Hmm.
If you get in the boat with me, you'd probably think I'm this ultra cerebral, got to focus on. I guided for a lot of years. So when I fish, I talk. So I'm talking to my marshal or I'm talking to the camera guy. I'm just more at ease being relaxed. And I find that when I'm relaxed, I'm much more efficient and I'm a much better fisherman. It's a hell of a lot more fun. I
Hmm.
tried to fish like my good friend Rick Clunn does, where he focuses on everything. He's only looking forward to that. That's how he thrives.
Yeah.
I have to enjoy. Oh, look, there goes a pretty bird. Look at those geese coming. Oh,
Yeah.
look at that deer over there. I,
Yeah.
I thrive from the whole thing. So when I try to take in the whole scenario of what's going on and what nature has out there, I tend to do better, and that keeps me more relaxed. Um, you know, I like it when it's a really tough tournament and I know I have to be, I'm only going to get 5 or 6 bites a day. Those are the tournaments when Mark Menendez does really well. I can always seem to catch a few fish and grind it out and struggle through it and catch them. When it's 100-pound slugfest, I've caught up in the 90s several times in my career, but doggone it, the tough ones are the best ones, and those are the ones that I really enjoy the most because when I get my fifth fish on and I get, I'm like, yeah, I've really stayed, I've done my job well. Just relax, have fun. Fishing is supposed to be fun. And if you're as stupid as I am in the boat, tripping on rods and falling down and uh, not being able to find your scissors in the bottom of the boat or whatever, it's a zoo when you're out there with me. It's amazing I've ever landed a bass most of the time. But just make sure fishing is fun. And and if it's not fun, sit down a minute. If it's gotten, you want to break your rods and you're cussing and you're screaming, people with you don't want to be around that. Sit down, take a chill pill, eat a sardine, stand up, refocus, go at it again, and you calm down.
Yeah.
Fishing is supposed to be fun.
Very good point and very good tip there. And I think a lot of us, and especially me, like I get spun out a lot of times when I'm on the water and I'm like, I'll have a great practice catching 20 pounds, go to the lake, for the tournament, and I zero. And I'm just spiraling out of control. Everything's going wrong. The trolling motor's dead because someone unplugged the boat the
Absolutely.
night before. Just every variable's going wrong. But like you said, at the end of the day, it's supposed to be fun. So it's kind of
Well, I'm just like you, dude. I've won practice more than anybody in the world. I've won practice a lot, but that does not pay well
no, it does not. It costs more than it pays.
most of the time.
Yeah, when you have to drive a few hours or even more for you in your instances, and you have great practice, and then go to the tournament, and you're like, well, nothing that I did in practice is happening. But it's like you got to stay positive and keep hoping that something's going to happen because the fish change so much, and we, like you said earlier in the show, with we have to keep an open mind. So just because I found them on that weed edge in the north side of the lake during practice, caught 20 pounds there. When I came back to that during the tournament and I wasn't catching any fish, I should have been like, okay, well, what else can I do instead of fixating on that and being like, I know they're here. I caught them here. They. It's not like they left, but in reality, maybe they're shut off for now. They've got too much pressure or whatnot. You got to go somewhere else and try and find them or find a similar area, something like
Well,
that.
that's the thing that we're guilty of. We're all guilty of, is trying to go find fish when you know where fish are. And it could be they moved a little further back into that weed edge. You have to change your technique. You have to kind of
Mhm.
punch to get in there.
Yeah.
They may be behind you.
Yeah.
Uh, there's no need to go looking for them when you know where they are a lot of times. And the first thing we do, we crank that Yamaha up and we haul butt 70 mile an hour, 15 miles down the lake, and you just left the winners. You
Yeah.
just left them, in 30 minutes. One thing that I still do, and I learned this from Mr. Watts as a 10-year-old, is I look for the major and the minor feeding period every day when I go fishing. I want to know if that major period is at 11 o'clock. You bet your butt, if I've got an area that I think I've found a few fish in, about 10:30, 11 o'clock, I'm going to slide through that best area.
Mm.
And then if the minor is at 2 o'clock, an hour before weigh-in, I'm going to slide back into that area if I need another fish. So looking at those slooner tables, majors and minors, that can really help you define where you need to be each day on the water. So that's old technology. It's old technology to know that animals and fish, the environment is affected by the moon, and there's no doubt about it. I've seen it too many times. Be sitting on a school of fish, and at 11 o'clock, the major starts at 11 o'clock. And about 10:55, one bites.
Yeah.
I may be I may be dumb, Jordan, but I'm not stupid. That's how I look at it, and you have to use everything to your advantage to catch these fish now.
Yeah. The one memory I will never forget is I was watching a video with Rick Clun the day before I was going to fish, and he said he was talking about the feeding windows, and he said if you look on the bank and the deer and the squirrels are eating, excuse me, then the bass will be eating. And I remember that next day I'm looking on the bank the whole time. I'm like looking for squirrels and birds, and they're being active, and then next thing you know, we start catching fish.
Mhm.
And it's just really amazing. And that's the other thing with fishing is like once you're in tune with nature while you're fishing, things come a lot easier because once you start
Yeah.
seeing those signs, it's
It certainly does, and it's amazing how all that ties in. And again, it goes back to that muscle memory. Now that you realize that when you don't see many things moving around on the bank up there, well, you better slow down and fish something slow. Drag a tube, a drop shot, a jig, something like that. But if you see lots of things going on, it's time to burn that spinner bait, throw that top water, throw that jerk bait, whatever it is, and move on down the bank and get to those active fish. So yeah, it's that muscle memory again.
yeah, awesome. Thank you. That's great advice there. I appreciate it. Um, so I just wanted to say thank you for being on the show today. I do really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man, got a packed full schedule, but as for the listeners, I hope you learned a lot and enjoyed this episode because I definitely enjoyed it. This was an awesome experience for me. And then for you, Mark, is there anyone you'd like to shout out? Sponsors, family members, anything like that?
Well, it takes a village, and I just appreciate everybody that I've worked with all of these years from Skeeter, Yamaha, Lou, Strike King, all the folks that I work with, Seagar. But there's a new person in my life, and got engaged to her about a month ago.
Oh,
Uh,
congrats.
and my fiance Melissa Wilson, she really keeps me in line. She is fun. She's reinvigorated life. We both went through the same thing of losing our
Mhm.
spouses over about 7 years ago now.
Yeah,
We met, became friends, and now I got a new fishing partner, and I just want to say how much I appreciate her and love her. So
that's
for making
awesome.
life better and making fishing fun again.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening and stay tuned for episode number 19 of the JD Outdoors podcast, brought to you by Woo Tungsten, Tacticalories, X Zone Lures, and now the JD Outdoors Lure Co. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having me.